My love, what has happened?
I am fading, my dear.
No, I cannot lose you.
I had been married to him for 23 years before he noticed I was dying. The physician had left an hour ago, his face carefully composed in that expression doctors wear when they have delivered news from which there is no recovery. 6 months, perhaps less. The growth in my chest was beyond any treatment medical science could offer. I would fade, he explained gently, like a candle burning down to nothing. I had thanked him for his honesty. I had ordered tea. I had sat in my private sitting room and allowed myself exactly 15 minutes of tears before composing myself. I was 47 years old. I had been the Countess of Thornwood since I was 24. And in all that time, my husband had barely looked at me. Our marriage had been arranged by our families, his ancient title matched to my substantial dowry, his need for funds balanced against my family's desire for aristocratic connections. We had exchanged vows in a chapel full of strangers, consummated our union with awkward efficiency, and then, nothing. He had his life. I had mine. He had his mistresses, his clubs, his political intrigues. I had the household, the charities, the quiet management of an estate he rarely visited. We occupied the same house but lived in different worlds, passing each other in corridors with polite nods, sharing meals in silence, existing as strangers who happened to share a name. I had stopped hoping for more after the first 5 years. I had stopped hurting after the first 10. By year 15, I had achieved a kind of peace, the acceptance of a woman who understood that love was not her portion in life and had learned to find meaning elsewhere. Now I was dying, and I had to decide whether to tell him. The rational part of my mind said yes. He was my husband. He had a right to know. There were arrangements to be made, affairs to be settled, preparations for the inevitable. But another part, the part that had been ignored and overlooked for 23 years, wanted something different. I wanted to know if he would notice. If I said nothing, changed nothing, continued my quiet existence as I always had, would he even realize something was wrong? Would he see the weight I would lose, the color that would fade from my cheeks, the increasing difficulty I would have managing the stairs? Would he see me at all before it was too late? It was a cruel test, perhaps. A bitter experiment conducted by a woman with nothing left to lose. But I had been invisible for so long that I needed to know if I had ever existed for him at all. So I said nothing. And I waited to see if my husband would notice his wife was dying. If you want to know whether the Count finally saw his invisible wife and what happened when he realized what he was about to lose, subscribe right now. This channel is just beginning our journey to 10,000 subscribers, and every single one of you helps us grow. Stay with me. This story is about to break your heart before it heals it. My name is Constance Harding, Constance Ashworth now, Countess of Thornwood, and I had spent my life learning to be useful rather than loved. I was not a beautiful woman, even in my youth. My features were pleasant but unremarkable, my figure adequate but not admired, my presence the kind that people's eyes slid past without registering. I had learned early that I would not command attention through appearance, so I had cultivated other qualities. I was intelligent. I was competent. I was reliable. These were not the qualities that inspired passion, but they were the qualities that kept great houses running, that managed crises without drama, that ensured everything functioned smoothly while others took the credit. The Earl of Thornwood, my husband, Benedict, had married me for my dowry. My father had made his fortune in trade, and that fortune had been essential to restoring the Ashworth estates after generations of aristocratic mismanagement. I had been the price of that restoration, the plain daughter traded for a title. I had understood this from the beginning. What I had not understood, what I had foolishly hoped might be different, was that the arrangement would remain purely transactional for our entire marriage. I had thought that proximity might breed affection, that shared life might create connection, that time might transform strangers into partners. I had been wrong. Benedict was not cruel. He was simply absent. Even when physically present, he occupied a different sphere than the one I inhabited. He spoke to me about household matters when necessary, acknowledged me at social functions when required, treated me with the distant courtesy one might show a competent servant. He had never struck me, never raised his voice to me, never denied me reasonable requests or interfered with my management of the household. He had simply never seen me as a person. And now I was dying, and I needed to know if that would change. The first month passed without incident. I continued my duties as I always had, managing the household, attending to correspondence, overseeing the charitable works that occupied my time. The symptoms of my illness were still subtle: occasional fatigue, a slight loss of appetite, nothing that would be obvious to anyone not looking closely. Benedict was not looking closely. He never had. We dined together most evenings when he was in residence, which was perhaps 3 times a week. He would enter the dining room, nod a greeting, take his seat at the opposite end of the long table, and eat while reading correspondence or newspapers. Occasionally he would make a comment about political affairs or estate business. I would respond appropriately. The meal would end, and we would retire to separate rooms. This had been our pattern for 23 years. I had once counted the words we exchanged during an average week. The number was distressingly small, perhaps 200, most of them purely functional. Pass the salt. The tenants require attention. I will be in London until Thursday. Not how are you feeling? Not you seem tired. Not is something troubling you? Those questions had never been part of our vocabulary. By the end of the first month, I had lost half a stone in weight. My dresses, always modest, hung more loosely on my frame. The color in my cheeks had faded to something pale and wan. Benedict did not notice. Or if he noticed, he did not comment. I was not surprised. I had expected exactly this. But there was still something painful about having my expectations confirmed, about watching my husband fail the test I had set for him, about realizing that I truly had been invisible all along. This is where the waiting begins. If you are feeling Constance's quiet desperation, drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. I read every single one. Subscribe. Like this video. Share it with someone who understands the pain of being overlooked. Help us reach 10,000 subscribers. The second month brought changes that were harder to conceal. The coughing began, deep, racking episodes that left me breathless and exhausted. I learned to time them carefully, retreating to my private rooms when I felt the pressure building in my chest, muffling the sounds with pillows and closed doors. The stairs became more difficult. I found myself pausing on landings, catching my breath, pretending to examine paintings or adjust decorations while my heart raced and my lungs struggled. The household staff began to notice. Mrs. Hartley, my housekeeper of 15 years, was the first to approach me directly. "My lady, forgive me, but are you well? You seem diminished lately." I had considered lying, but Mrs. Hartley had been my closest companion for years, closer than my husband had ever been. She deserved the truth. "I am ill, Mrs. Hartley. The physician has given me 6 months, perhaps less." Her face crumpled with grief. "My lady, does his lordship know?" "Not yet. But surely he should be told." "I will tell him when I am ready. For now, I would appreciate your discretion." She promised to keep my secret, though I could see she disagreed with my decision. What she could not understand, what no one who had not lived my life could understand, was why I needed to conduct this experiment. I needed to know if I mattered. I needed to know if 23 years of invisible devotion had made any impression on the man I had married. I needed to know if he would see me before it was too late. The third month brought a visitor who would change everything. Lady Caroline Hartington was my oldest friend. We had known each other since girlhood, before my father's wealth elevated our family, before marriage separated us into different spheres. She visited Thornwood Hall whenever she could, bringing gossip and warmth into my quiet existence. She took one look at me and burst into tears. "Constance. My God. What has happened to you?" I tried to dissemble, but Caroline had known me too long. She saw through every deflection, every excuse, every attempt to minimize what she could clearly see. "You are dying," she said finally, her voice flat with horror. "You are dying, and you have not told anyone. The servants know. Mrs. Hartley knows. But not Benedict." "No. Why? Constance, why would you keep this from your own husband?" I looked at my oldest friend. This woman who had married for love, who had been cherished by her husband until his death 5 years ago, who could not possibly understand what my marriage was. "Because I want to see if he notices. I want to know if I exist for him at all, or if I have simply been furniture in his house for 23 years. That is madness. Perhaps. But it is my madness, and I am entitled to it. Caroline stayed for a week, watching me with worried eyes, trying to persuade me to confide in Benedict. But she could not change my mind. I had committed to this course, and I would see it through. When she left, she embraced me for a long time. "Write to me," she said. "Let me know what happens. I will write until I cannot write any more. And then I will come. I will be here at the end, even if he is not." By the 4th month, I could no longer hide my deterioration. The weight loss was dramatic now. I had become gaunt, my cheekbones prominent, my collarbones visible beneath the high necklines I wore. The coughing had worsened, sometimes producing blood that I carefully concealed. I could no longer manage the stairs without assistance, though I tried to time my movements so that servants rather than my husband saw my weakness. The household had organized itself around my decline. Mrs. Hartley had taken over many of my duties, consulting with me privately rather than requiring me to manage directly. The staff moved quietly, efficiently, protecting their mistress from the man who should have been protecting her. Benedict remained oblivious. Or so I believed, until the evening he found me collapsed in the library. I had been reaching for a book on a high shelf, foolish, given my condition, but I had been feeling stubborn. The dizziness came without warning, and suddenly I was on the floor, unable to summon the strength to rise, staring up at the ceiling and wondering if this was how it would end. The door opened. Constance. It was the first time Benedict had spoken my Christian name in years. The surprise of it was almost more shocking than my condition. He crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt beside me, his face, that familiar, distant face, transformed by an expression I had never seen before. Fear. What is wrong? What has happened? Should I call for the physician? Help me up, I managed. Help me to the settee. He lifted me as though I weighed nothing, which, by now, I nearly did, and carried me to the settee, settling me against the cushions with a gentleness that brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "You are ill," he said. "You have been ill for some time. Why did you not tell me?" I looked at him, this stranger I had been married to for 23 years. And I laughed. The laugh became a cough, and the cough became a struggle for breath, and Benedict held me through it with an expression of growing horror. When I could speak again, I told him the truth. "I wanted to see if you would notice. We are at the revelation now. If you are feeling this moment of devastating truth, share this video with someone who understands what it means to be invisible. Subscribe. Help us reach 10,000 subscribers. Every single one of you matters." The silence that followed my confession stretched for an eternity. Benedict sat beside me on the settee, close enough to touch but not touching, his face cycling through emotions I had never seen him display: shock, confusion, guilt, and something that might have been grief. "Notice," he repeated finally. "You wanted to see if I would notice that my wife was dying. I wanted to know if I existed for you. If I had ever existed." My voice was steady despite everything. "We have been married for 23 years, Benedict. In all that time, you have never once asked me how I was feeling. You have never noticed when I was sad or tired or unwell. You have treated me as you would treat a well-functioning piece of machinery, useful when operational, ignored unless broken. That is not. It is exactly true. You know it is true." I met his eyes, refusing to look away. "I have managed your household, overseen your charities, maintained your social obligations. I have been a competent countess in every way that matters. But I have never been your wife. I have never been your companion. I have never been anything except a function you required." He was silent, unable to deny what we both knew. So I decided to conduct an experiment. I wanted to know if you would see me failing before I disappeared entirely. And now I have my answer. Constance. You did not notice. 4 months of visible deterioration, and you did not notice until you literally tripped over my collapsed body. The bitterness I had suppressed for so long finally emerged. I have been dying in front of you, and you did not see it because you have never seen me. He reached for my hand. I let him take it, though I felt nothing from the contact except the physical warmth of his fingers. "How long?" he asked. 2 months, perhaps. Perhaps less. 2 months. His voice cracked. "You have been ill for 4 months, and you have 2 months remaining, and you told no one because you wanted to test whether your husband would notice." "Yes. And if I had noticed, if I had seen the changes and asked what was wrong, then I would have known that 23 years of marriage had meant something. That I was more than furniture. That you might grieve when I was gone. I will grieve. The words seemed torn from him. Constance, I will grieve. Will you? Or will you simply hire someone else to manage your household and move on with your life unchanged? He flinched as though I had struck him. Good. The weeks that followed were unlike any we had experienced in our marriage. Benedict cancelled his engagements in London. He dismissed his mistress. Yes, I had always known about her, a widow of respectable background who had provided the companionship I had never offered. He moved his belongings to the chamber adjoining mine and installed himself as my constant companion. At first, I resisted. This is performative, I told him, when he insisted on reading to me from the morning papers. You are assuaging your guilt, not expressing genuine care. Perhaps I am. Does that make it worthless? It makes it late. 23 years too late. I know. He set down the paper and looked at me with those eyes that had never really seen me until now. I know I have been a terrible husband. I know I have wasted our marriage on indifference and neglect. I cannot undo that. But I can try to make whatever time remains different. Why? Because you feel guilty. Because I am beginning to realize what I am about to lose. I wanted to dismiss this as too little, too late. I wanted to maintain my bitter detachment, my hard-won acceptance of a loveless life. But I was dying. And I was tired. And there was something in his eyes that I had never seen before, not love, perhaps, but the possibility of love. The recognition that I was a person rather than a function. The beginning of the seeing I had wanted for so long. Read to me, I said finally. The papers are dreadfully boring, but read to me anyway. He smiled. A real smile, warm and slightly uncertain, and he read. The staff did not know what to make of the transformation. For 23 years, the Earl and Countess of Thornwood had existed in polite separation, their marriage a matter of practicality rather than affection. Now, suddenly, his lordship was constantly at her ladyship's side reading to her, walking with her in the gardens when she could manage it, sitting beside her fire in the evenings. Mrs. Hartley approached me privately. My lady, forgive my presumption, but, is this genuine? His lordship's attention? I do not know, Mrs. Hartley. I think he is trying to make amends for years of neglect. Whether that constitutes genuine affection or merely guilt, I cannot say. And does it matter? At this point, I considered the question seriously. Perhaps not. Perhaps what matters is that he is here now. That he is trying. I smiled weakly. I spent 23 years wanting to be seen. Now I am being seen. The motivation matters less than the experience. You are more forgiving than I would be. I am too tired for anger, Mrs. Hartley. Anger requires energy I no longer have. The conversations with Benedict grew deeper as the weeks passed. He asked me questions about my childhood, my interests, my thoughts on matters we had never discussed. He listened when I answered, actually listened, leaning forward with an attention he had never shown before. Why did you never tell me these things? He asked, after I had described my secret passion for botanical illustration, the sketchbooks I had filled over the years, the study of plants that had given meaning to my quiet existence. You never asked. I should have asked. Yes. You should have. I am asking now. Yes. You are. It was not forgiveness, exactly. But it was something. The 5th month brought a visit I had not expected. Lady Caroline arrived with her carriage full of supplies. Medicines she had obtained from the continent, physicians' recommendations she had gathered through her extensive connections, everything she could think of that might help. She also brought news. The physician you saw was wrong, she said, breathless with hope. There is a doctor in Vienna who has had success with cases like yours. He uses different treatments, experimental methods. He might be able to. Caroline. I took her hand gently. I am dying. I have accepted it. But if there is a chance. There is no chance. I have seen 3 physicians now, each one confirming what the first told me. I smiled at her. I am at peace, my dear. More at peace than I have been in years. How can you be at peace? You are 47 years old. You have years of life left that this disease is stealing from you. I have had 23 years of life that I did not truly live. I existed, but I did not live. I glanced toward the window, where Benedict was walking in the garden, glancing up toward my window every few minutes as though checking that I was still there. Now, in these final weeks, I am finally being seen. I am finally being known. It is late, terribly late, but it is happening. That is not enough. It will have to be. Caroline stayed for 2 weeks, her presence a comfort even as she struggled to accept what I had already accepted. She and Benedict formed an unlikely alliance, united in their determination to make my remaining time as comfortable as possible. He truly has changed, she admitted one evening. I have watched him with you, and it is not performance. He is genuinely present. He is learning to see me. 23 years late, but learning. And you forgive him. I understand him. Whether that is the same as forgiveness, I do not know. The final weeks were both terrible and beautiful. Terrible because my body was failing, the coughing constant now, the pain requiring increasing doses of laudanum, the simple acts of breathing and eating becoming Herculean efforts. Beautiful because I was not alone. Benedict rarely left my side. He slept in the chair beside my bed, waking whenever I stirred, holding my hand through the difficult nights. He learned to read my needs without my speaking them. A sip of water, another pillow, the comfort of his presence when the fear became too great. I am sorry, he said, one evening, when the end was clearly near. I am sorry for every year I wasted. Every conversation we never had. Every moment I failed to see you. I know. It is not enough. Saying it is not enough. No. But it is something. I squeezed his hand weakly. Tell me, if you had known, at the beginning, that this would be our end, would you have done anything differently? He was silent for a long moment. I would like to say yes. I would like to tell you that I would have been the husband you deserved from the start. His voice broke. But I am not certain it is true. I was young and arrogant and blind. I might have needed exactly this, losing you, to understand what I had. That is honest. You taught me honesty. In these last months, you taught me more than I learned in all the years before. Then something good has come from this. Not enough. Never enough to balance what was lost. He brought my hand to his lips. I love you, Constance. I know it is too late. I know you may not believe me, but I love you. I looked at him, this man I had married, this stranger who had become something more than a stranger in the time remaining, and I believed him. I believe you, I said. And I forgive you. He wept then, as I had never seen him weep. And I held him, with what little strength I had left, as he finally understood what he was about to lose. I died on a Tuesday afternoon in late autumn. The leaves had turned gold and crimson, visible through my window, and Benedict had arranged my bed so I could see them. He was holding my hand when I took my last breath, and he continued holding it for hours afterward, unable to let go. Caroline was there. Mrs. Hartley was there. The household staff gathered outside my door, mourning a mistress who had been kind to them even when no one was watching. Benedict lived another 22 years. He never remarried. He kept my botanical sketchbooks in his study, paging through them often, studying the detailed illustrations of plants I had loved. He continued the charitable works I had begun, expanding them, dedicating them to my memory. He spoke of me constantly to anyone who would listen. Not with the distant courtesy of a husband mourning a useful wife, but with the raw grief of a man who had lost the person who mattered most. I did not deserve her, he would tell visitors. I had 23 years to love her, and I wasted them. She gave me 5 months of grace at the end, 5 months to see what I had ignored, and those 5 months were worth more than all the years before. The inscription on my tombstone was his choice. Here lies Constance Ashworth, Countess of Thornwood, who taught her husband to see too late, but not too late to matter. She was the invisible Countess until he almost lost her. It was a story of love too late, but it was still a story of love. And in the end, that was what mattered most. I was seen. I was known. I was loved. Even if it came at the very end, when there was almost no time left to enjoy it, it came. And that was enough. Thank you for staying with me through this entire story. If it moved you, if it reminded you to see the people in your life before it is too late, please subscribe. This channel is just beginning our journey to 10,000 subscribers, and every single one of you helps us grow. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it is never too late to see the people who love us. Comment where you are watching from. I read every single one, and I want to say hello to you. Like this video. Subscribe to our channel. Help us reach the people who need these stories. Until next time, remember, the people who matter most are sometimes the ones we see least. Do not wait until you are losing them to truly see them.